The air in the Northwood High gymnasium tasted of ambition. It was a potent cocktail of floor polish, old sweat, and the faint, aerosol scent of hairspray. It was a kingdom, and like any kingdom, it had a queen. Tiffany Tiff Dubois stood at the center of the royal blue mat, a monarch surveying her domain. Her ponytail was a sleek blonde weapon, slicing through the air as she barked out counts. 5, 6, 7, 8. Hit it, Ashley. Your back handspring is lazy. Again, her voice wasn't just loud. It was sharp, honed to cut through the noise, and directly into the insecurities of her teammates. Her smile, a dazzling flash of orthodontia, never quite thawed the icy perfection of her features. She was the captain of the Northwood High Lions cheerleading squad, a position she held with the divine right of a 3-year veteran whose father's name was etched onto a brass plaque on the new science wing. And then there was Zara was the anomaly, the variable Tiff's rigid equation hadn't accounted for, a transfer student who had appeared from nowhere. Zara was quiet and observant, her dark expressive eyes taking in everything. During tryouts, her talent had been a silent explosion, while other girls offered practiced smiles and stiff, if competent, routines. Zara moved with a fluid power that was both breathtaking and unnerving. Her tumbling passes weren't just executed, they were commanded. Her jumps seemed to hang in the air a moment longer than physics should allow. The coach had no choice but to add her to the varsity squad, a decision that Tiff had publicly endorsed with a tight, brittle smile while privately viewing it as an insurrection. Today, they were working on the centerpiece of their competition. Routine, a treacherous 3-level pyramid. Zara was a mid-base, a crucial load-bearing position. Ready, flyers, Tiff commanded, clapping her hands with a sound like a gavel. Bases set, and ... up. The structure rose, a precarious human architecture, of muscle and trust. Zara felt the familiar weight of the flyer's foot in her palm, her body automatically adjusting, her core locked tight. But then, something went wrong. The top flyer, a nervous sophomore named Maya, wobbled, her balance thrown by a moment of hesitation. A collective gasp rippled through the gym. The pyramid swayed like a tree in a hurricane. Instinct took over. Before the coach could even shout a command, Zara shifted her weight, sinking lower and widening her stance, creating a more stable platform. She called out in a low, steady voice, "Breathe, Maya, I've got you. Straighten your leg on my count. 3, 2, 1. Now." Maya responded, her body finding the line again. The pyramid locked into place, solid and perfect. A few seconds later, they dismounted flawlessly. A smattering of applause broke out from the team. The coach, a woman whose praise was famously sparse, nodded appreciatively. "Good save, Khan. That's what I like to see. Heads up teamwork." Zara felt a small, warm bloom of satisfaction. It was instantly frozen over by the arctic chill of Tiff's gaze. The queen did not like her thunder stolen. That was reckless, Tiff announced, striding toward Zara. The gym fell silent. "You broke formation, Khan. You went off count. In a competition, that's a point deduction. We don't do improvisation here, we do perfection, do you understand?" Maya was falling, Zara said, her voice even, though her heart was starting to pound. "I just stabilized her. I would have called the correction," Tiff snapped. "Your job is to listen to your captain, not to be a hero. It seems our new star needs a lesson in team culture." She scanned the room, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "Since you have so much extra energy, you can handle jersey duty tonight. Collect and wash all of them. And I mean all of them." The other girls shuffled their feet, refusing to meet Zara's eyes. Jersey duty was the lowest, most menial form of hazing, a captain's tool for putting someone in their place. An hour later, Zara stood alone in the cavernous, echoing locker room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly pale light on the piles of sweaty, grass-stained jerseys. The air was thick with the smell of exertion and the metallic tang of teenage cruelty. She clutched a dirty jersey in her hand, the proud lion mascot on the chest seeming to mock her. She had come to Northwood for a fresh start, a place where her name meant nothing, where she could just be a student, an athlete. She now realized her talent hadn't earned her a place on the team. It had painted a target on her back. Tiff's initial strike was merely the opening salvo in what became a relentless campaign. The hazing evolved from public dominance displays to a quiet, insidious psychological warfare. Zara found herself living in a world of whispers. As she walked down the school hallways, conversations would die, replaced by snickers the moment she passed. Rumors, sticky and venomous as tar, began to circulate. She was a charity case who couldn't afford the fees. She was kicked out of her last school for fighting. She cheated on her entrance exams. The sabotage became more direct. One afternoon, just before practice, her specialized cheer shoes, painstakingly broken in, were missing from her locker, only to be found later in a lost and found bin on the other side of the school. Their laces tied in 100 tiny, impossible knots. During a floor routine, a smear of Vaseline on the mat sent her slipping, a fall that bruised her hip in her pride. Tiff and her inner circle feigned shock and concern with a theatrical flair that made Zara's stomach turn. Each day was a new test of her resolve. She felt herself shrinking, the vibrant confidence she possessed on the mat eroding into a brittle shell of defensiveness. Loneliness was a constant, heavy cloak. She ate lunch in a secluded corner of the library, the pages of a book a shield against the curious or malicious stares. More than once, she drafted a text to the coach, the words, "I quit," typed out, her thumb hovering over the send button. The only thing that stopped her was a deeply ingrained stubbornness, a refusal to let them win. That evening, staring at the ceiling of her small, neat bedroom, she called her father. His face appeared on the screen, mostly in shadow, the glittering skyline of a distant city framed in the window behind him. He never showed his full surroundings. It was a rule of their course, a precaution so ingrained it was second nature. Zari, his voice was a low, warm rumble that always made her feel safe. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Dad. Just ... school." He was quiet for a moment, but she knew he was reading the hesitation in her voice, the weariness in her eyes. He was the most perceptive man she had ever known. He didn't ask about friends or classes. He asked, "Is your business handled?" It was their code, a language born of a complicated life. Business was anything that mattered, anything that challenged her. "I'm working on it," she sighed. "Tell me." "It's just a girl on the team," she admitted, the words feeling small and childish. "The captain. She has it out for me." He didn't offer to intervene. He never did. That wasn't his way. His job was to forge her into someone who could handle her own battles. There will always be people like that, Zari. People who mistake kindness for weakness. People whose power is built on the fear of others. You don't run from them. "I'm not," she said, a little defensively. "Good," he said, his voice softening. "Remember, Conblood doesn't run. It stands. It watches. It learns. And it waits for the right moment. You handle it your way. Use that sharp mind of yours. But know that I'm always watching the board." She knew what that meant. He wasn't just a spectator. He was the Grand Master, always aware of every piece. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. She ended the call feeling a renewed sense of strength, the wavering resolve hardening back into steel. She would not quit. She would stand. The next day at school, seeking refuge in the library, she felt a presence beside her. She looked up to see Mr. Omar Hassan, the school principal. He was a tall, imposing man with a stern reputation, but his eyes held a surprising warmth. 100 years of solitude, he said, nodding at the book in her hands. A fine choice. A story about family, legacy, and the inescapable pull of the past. Zara mumbled a thank you, expecting him to move on. Instead, he lingered. "I've been impressed with your academic reports, Ms. Khan," he said, his voice low. "You have a formidable intellect. Don't let the noise of this place distract you from it." It was a simple comment, but it landed with profound weight. He hadn't mentioned cheerleading, the rumors, or the drama. He had seen her. For the first time in weeks, Zara felt like she wasn't invisible. As Mr. Hassan walked away, she watched him go, a flicker of an idea taking root in her mind. Her father was right. It was time to stop reacting and start thinking. The annual fall pep rally was Northwood High's first major spectacle of the school year. The entire student body would be packed into the gym, a roaring sea of blue and gold. For Tiff, it was the perfect stage for Zara's ultimate humiliation. Her plan was simple, vicious, and theatrical, right before Zara's solo tumbling pass. Tiff's most loyal lieutenant, Brittany, would accidentally trip while carrying a bucket of spirit supplies, dousing Zara in a sticky, glittering concoction of honey and gold confetti. The beauty of the plan, in Tiff's mind, was its plausible deniability. It would be an accident, a hilarious, shareable, meme-worthy accident that would cement Zara's status as a clumsy outcast and Tiff's as the sympathetic captain who had to deal with such drama. Zara, however, had been sharpened by weeks of paranoia. She had learned to watch and listen, to read the subtle currents of conspiracy in the locker room. Her father's words echoed in her mind. It watches, it learns, and it waits. She saw the way Tiff and Brittany exchanged secretive glances, the way Brittany kept eyeing the janitor's closet where the supplies were kept. Behind the bleachers after practice, hidden by the shadows, Zara listened as they finalized their plan, their whispers dripping with cruel glee. Her first instinct was a hot rush of panic. Her second was a cold, surging tide of anger. She imagined confronting them, a screaming match, maybe even a physical fight. But that was their game, their territory. A public outburst would only make her look unhinged, proving their rumors right. Then a third feeling washed over her, a deep, icy calm. She remembered another of her father's lessons. Never fight on their terms. Change the battlefield. She didn't wait for Brittany to come to her. She intercepted her by the vending machines, a quiet corner of the school where they were alone. Brittany jumped when Zara seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Hey, Brittany." Zara's voice was unnervingly pleasant. "Oh, hey, Zara," Brittany stammered, fumbling with her wallet. "Big pep rally tomorrow," Zara continued, leaning against the machine. Next to her, "I know Tiff wants it to be perfect. No accidents." She let the word accidents hang in the air for a beat. Brittany's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Yeah, of course." Good. Zara pushed off the wall, turning to face her fully. Her voice dropped, losing all its warmth, becoming flat and hard. "As Slate, I know what Tiff asked you to do with the honey and glitter. Bad idea." Brittany paled, her mouth opening and closing with no sound. Zara took a half step closer, invading her space. "Look, this has nothing to do with you, so I'm going to give you some friendly advice. My family, we used to have business interests out by the old industrial park, specifically in the Gladeside development project." At the mention of Gladeside, a flicker of genuine fear sparked in Brittany's eyes. "It was a complicated deal," Zara continued, her voice a low murmur. "My father had to persuade a very stubborn man named Dubois to see things his way. I'm sure Tiff's dad remembers. Tell Tiff that messing with my hair is one thing, but waking up old ghosts is another. Some people hold grudges. Stay out of it." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She simply stated it as fact. The Gladeside project was a notoriously murky chapter in the Dubois family's rise. It had involved the aggressive clearing of old landowners and rumors of intimidation tactics that were never proven but always whispered about. For Zara to know that name to connect it to her own family was unthinkable. It was like a ghost from her father's past had just walked into the hallway. Zara gave a small, chillingly polite smile. "Have a nice day, Brittany." She walked away, leaving Brittany frozen by the vending machine. The color drained from her face. The next day, Brittany called in sick to school, texting Tiff a flimsy excuse about food poisoning. Tiff was left standing, alone with her bucket of glitter and honey, a furious, confused queen whose pawn had just been taken off the board by an invisible hand. For the first time, Tiff looked at the quiet girl at the end of the locker row and felt a prickle of something other than contempt. It was a cold, unfamiliar spike of fear. The failed pep rally plot created a hairline fracture in Tiff's regime. The fear Zara had so precisely instilled in Brittany was contagious. Whispers of a different kind now circulated among the team, not about Zara, but about the confrontation. Brittany, terrified, had confessed the story to another girl, and it spread like wildfire. The team's perception of Zara began to shift. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was something else entirely. Zara sensed the change and used the opening, not with aggression, but with grace. She saw a freshman Tara struggling to nail a toe-touch basket toss. Tiff had screamed at her twice before dismissing her. Zara quietly approached Tara later, offering a simple tip about spotting the ceiling. They practiced it together, and when Tara finally nailed it, Zara made sure to praise her loudly in front of the coach. It was a simple act of kindness, but in the toxic ecosystem Tiff had cultivated, it felt like a revolution. Slowly, tentatively, the marginalized girls on the team started gravitating toward Zara, forming a small, unofficial coalition of the overlooked. Tiff felt her power slipping, and it made her desperate. The fear Zara had planted had taken root, and she had to know more. She did something she'd only done twice before. She called her father, not for praise or money, but for information. She asked him to run a background check on Zara Khan. The call she received back from him was not what she expected. Her father wasn't dismissive or reassuring. His voice was strained, tight with an anger she'd never heard directed at her before. He told her the facts, his words clipped and sharp. Zara Khan's mother was a deceased, respected doctor. Her father was Amir Khan. The name meant nothing to Tiff, so her father clarified, spitting the name out like poison. "They call him the Serpent, Tiffany. He's a ghost, a legend. He controls half the city's shipping and logistics, legal and otherwise. He's untouchable, and he's not someone you poke with a stick. Tiff's blood ran cold. This wasn't just some girl from a rough neighborhood. This was the daughter of a genuine monster, a name whispered with fear in the very boardrooms her father dominated. But in her panic, Tiff miscalculated. She saw this knowledge not as a warning, but as a weapon. A silver bullet to expose Zara and reclaim her throne. She cornered Zara in the locker room, making sure the entire team was present. It was her final play. "I know who you are," Tiff announced, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. The chattering in the room ceased. "I know who your father is." Zara, who was calmly lacing her shoes, looked up. Her expression was unreadable. "You don't belong here," Tiff pressed on, her voice rising. "You're nothing but criminal trash, hiding among decent people." The air grew thick and heavy. The other girls looked back and forth between their deposed queen and the silent newcomer. Zara slowly stood up, her movements deliberate, calm. She didn't look angry. She looked almost disappointed. "You're right, Tiff. You do know who he is," Zara said, her voice soft but carrying across the silent room. "And because you know, you must also know that he doesn't like loose ends, and he especially doesn't like his family being threatened." She took a step toward Tiff, who instinctively flinched. "I spoke to him last night," Zara lied, her gaze unwavering. "He was asking about your father. He said to tell him that he hopes the harbor contracts are going well. He's always so protective of his investments." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And he said to tell you that the serpent is always watching." Tiff's face collapsed. The harbor contracts were her father's biggest, most vulnerable project, a multi-billion-dollar deal fraught with union disputes and shadowy competitors. For Zara to know that, to link it to her father's notorious nickname, was not just a threat, it was a demonstration of terrifying, intimate power. It was a message from one king to the family of a lesser one. Tiff staggered back, her face ashen. She had tried to expose Zara by linking her to the criminal underworld, but in doing so, had just publicly implicated her own family's dealings with that same world. The team stared, their expressions a mixture of awe and terror. They were no longer looking at Zara, the criminal's daughter. They were looking at Tiff, the terrified bully, who had just been completely and utterly silenced. Panic is a poor strategist. Tiff felt the walls of her kingdom crumbling, her power evaporating into the fearful silence of the locker room. When she had tearfully called her father to tell him what happened, he had exploded in a torrent of rage, not at Zara, but at her. "You foolish girl," he had roared. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You don't stir the nest of a snake." Cut off from her father's support and socially marooned, Tiff made one last, desperate move. It was the act of a cornered animal. She would frame Zara for a crime so unambiguous it would get her expelled. Serpent father or not, she decided on theft. The team had just concluded a major fundraising drive, and the cash, several $1,000s, was temporarily locked in a drawer in the coach's office. After practice, Tiff forced the flimsy lock, took the money, and making sure the coast was clear, shoved a significant portion of it into the back of Zara's locker, tucking it beneath her running shorts. But Tiff was no longer the only strategist. In the game, Zara's mind, forged in a world of caution, was always thinking 2 steps ahead. Following the locker room showdown, several girls had reported Tiff's verbal assault to Mr. Hassan, the principal. His concern now fully engaged, had called Zara to his office. He expected to see a frightened or angry student. Instead, he found a young woman of unnerving composure. Zara didn't demand action. She simply stated, "Mr. Hassan, I'm worried Tiffany might do something desperate. She's not thinking clearly. I trust that you'll ensure the truth comes out. No matter what happens." Her poise and foresight struck him. She wasn't asking him to fight her battle, but to be a fair referee. Intrigued and impressed, Mr. Hassan had discreetly asked the school's IT department to ensure the security camera covering the hallway outside the coach's office and locker room was recording perfectly. The next morning, Tiff unleashed her final act. She ran into the gym, performing a masterful symphony of tears and panic. The fundraising money is gone," she cried to the coach. "The drawer in your office is broken." As the team gathered, Tiff, choking on fake sobs, pointed a trembling finger at Zara. "She was the last one to leave yesterday. She's always been jealous of this team. You have to check her locker." A heavy silence fell. The coach looked uncertain, but the accusation was too serious to ignore. With a grim expression, she turned to Mr. Hassan, who had arrived on the scene. "We have to look," the coach said. "Indeed, we do," Mr. Hassan agreed, his voice calm. They walked to Zara's locker. Zara stood by, her face a mask of neutrality. Tiff's eyes gleamed with a vicious, triumphant light. The coach opened the locker, and after a moment of searching, pulled out the wad of cash. A gasp went through the team. Tiff burst into a fresh round of sobs. I knew it. Mr. Hassan let the dramatic moment hang in the air for a second before he spoke, his voice cutting through the noise. Thank you for confirming, Tiffany, he said calmly. I was wondering where you'd put it. Tiff's crying sputtered to a halt. What? Mr. Hassan held up a tablet. Modern technology is a wonderful tool for ensuring academic and personal integrity, he said, pressing play. The screen showed a crystal clear video. It was time-stamped from the previous evening. It showed Tiff, her face a mask of grim determination, forcing the office door, emerging with the cash box, and then furtively stuffing the money into Zara's locker. The gym was utterly silent, the only sound of faint audio from the tablet. The truth, stark and undeniable, played out for everyone to see. Tiff's face went from triumphant to confused to utterly, devastatingly horrified. But she stammered, looking around wildly. It was then that the dam broke. Tara, the freshman, Zara had helped, stepped forward. She's been bullying Zara all semester, she said, her voice shaking but clear. Another girl chimed in, then another, their voices rising in a chorus of corroboration, detailing the months of cruelty, sabotage, and intimidation. Tiff's reign was over. It had not been ended by a gangster's bullet or a whispered threat. In the night, it had been dismantled by her own actions, her own cruelty, brought into the light by the quiet, patient intelligence of the girl she had tried to destroy. Stripped of her captaincy, expelled from the team, and facing formal disciplinary action, Tiff Dubois finally understood the meaning of consequences. In the aftermath of Tiff's spectacular downfall, the Northwood High Lions were a team fractured and adrift. Their leader was gone, their morale was shattered, and the state finals were less than a week away. The coach, looking to restore order, immediately offered the captaincy to Zara. To everyone's surprise, Zara respectfully declined. Instead, she gathered the shaken team on the practice mat. One captain didn't work out so well for us, she said, her voice resonating with a newfound, quiet authority. This team isn't about one person. It's about all of us. I think we should elect 3 captains, one to lead stretches, one to call chants, and one to run routines. We'll lead together. It was a revolutionary idea, a shift from monarchy to democracy. It was also exactly what the team needed. They elected Zara, Tara, and a pragmatic senior named Chloe. A new collaborative energy began to mend the broken pieces. That night, Zara sat by her window and called her father. The city lights behind him seemed to twinkle more brightly than usual. She told him everything: the frame-up, the camera, Mr. Hassan, the captaincy. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. She could just make out his silhouette, a figure of immense power, listening to his daughter's story. You didn't use my name, Zari, he finally said, and for the first time, she heard an undisguised smile in his voice. You didn't use my reputation. You used your own strength, your own mind. You stood on your own ground, and won. He paused. Your mother, she would be so proud of you. A tear traced a path down Zara's cheek, but it was one of relief, of release. It was the validation she had been seeking her entire life. She had not run from his shadow, but she had finally stepped out from under it, not by rejecting who he was, but by defining who she was. The next day, Mr. Hassan called Zara to his office. There were no tablets or accusations, just 2 cups of tea on his desk. I wanted to commend you, Zara, he said, his gaze direct and filled with respect. You were dealt a difficult hand, but you played it with extraordinary integrity. He leaned forward slightly. There are many kinds of power in this world. There is the power of money and influence, like the Dubois family has. There is the power of fear, which you could have easily used, but you chose a different kind, the power of character. He smiled. That kind is the most formidable of all. Don't ever forget that. The story culminates at the state finals. The roar of the crowd is a physical force, but on the mat, the Northwood High Lions are an island of focused calm. They move as one entity. Their routine, a breathtaking display of syncopation and trust. The final pyramid rises, higher and more complex than the one that had started it all weeks ago, and at its very peak, held aloft in a perfect, graceful lift, is Zara. She is not a show-off, she is not a queen, she is an integral part of a whole, her strength supporting the team as their trust supports her. As the final note of the music hits, she looks out at the blinding lights in the faceless crowd, and for the first time since coming to Northwood, a genuine, unburdened smile spreads across her face. It is the smile of a girl who has fought her battle, found her place, and won a victory that is truly her own. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to see that knowledge is power. Hit the like button, subscribe for more stories that matter, and let's keep the conversation going in the comments.